Here we
All
are.
right, everybody. Hello, we are live. So exciting.
Hello, happy Monday.
Nikki, is
Hi.
this your first webinar live video?
It is, and I'm
All
I'm
right.
I'm a I'm not on social media, so this is a lot for me.
Well, this will make you laugh. Denise and I started this at the beginning of the year, and at first Denise thought it was going to be like once a month, and I'm like, let's do it every week, like
We'll do it every week.
every week. Go big or
That's
go
why your
home.
makeup looks perfect, right?
Yeah,
She's
it does.
she does this.
She's like spot on. So,
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
welcome everybody. Quick introduction here. We're so excited. We've got Nicole Royer joining us. I'm Sarah Futa. We've got Denisse Anaya. We're with the Futa Home Team, and we are going to talk about estate planning and trusts because it's one of the big questions that we get. And quite honestly, I mean, Nikki, I'm going to let you tell us a little bit about yourself here, but we just figured out that we've known each other for 10 years. I met you because you put together our trust, and I still don't even know what I'm doing with it. So it'll be a good refresher on some of the benefits, right? I'm sure Scott, my husband, knows much more about what we're doing with it than I do. So with that, Nikki, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I've been doing estate planning for about 11 years, 12 years now, and before that, I was in the bigger law firm, public offerings, big deal transactions, and this I like a lot better because it lets me work with real people, solve real people problems, and the it's just probably the best area of law to be in, if we're being honest.
Yeah,
Because you're helping people plan, you're helping people get organized, and there's a lot of good energy around that.
that's awesome. And where are you located at?
I'm in Greenwood Village. My office is close to Fiddler's Green and
Perfect.
Burns and Wilcox building, so it's easy to find and easy to park.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Nice. You
That's
get
good
good
to
parking when there's a concert?
yeah, sometimes.
Well, Denise, why don't you kick us off here?
Yes, well, I will start with the basics. What is a trust?
Okay. Well,
That's a
there's
loaded
two
question.
ways to plan, huh?
It's a loaded question right
A
there.
loaded question. No, there's you have to, one should, you don't have to. It'll all get taken care of you for you in the long run, but ideally you do something deliberate in case you end up, in an incapacitated situation and someone has to help you with your finances, or you've died and someone has to manage your finances. And so the idea is to get something in place that's going to help your family, your friends manage things when you're gone or if you're in the hospital. And that's called estate planning in general. And there's really kind of two ways of doing it. And one's with a trust-based plan and one was with a will-based plan. And there's advantages to both. And I talk through both with my clients. I'm not particular to one or the other. It just really is situational. Um, a lot of people want to avoid probates, and a trust is a good way to avoid probates. And trusts are really useful planning vehicles. And since this talk is about trust, I won't go into will-based planning. But if we're just going with the assumption that someone wants a trust and what that means, it's basically an estate planning tool that allows someone to manage your assets if you're incapacitated, and it allows someone to easily administer your estate and make distributions when you've died.
Perfect. So, from that bigger picture, obviously on the financial side of things, your real estate, your houses that you own. I mean, some people own just their primary residence, some have other residents as
Mhm.
well. Where does the benefit come in from having a trust and having your house or your residence in a trust?
Sure. Real estate is one of the triggers that when I'm analyzing whether a family wants a trust or something else, I think one of the triggers is minor children. Another trigger is real estate. And real estate, by definition, can only be transferred in a couple of different ways. And one is through a trust, and one is through the probate court. And so a trust is very useful with real estate because your trust can own your real estate. And here we're talking about revocable trusts, and the trustees of my trust, which is me today, can own my house. My house is owned through my trust. So Sarah's, and so we, it's a great vehicle to own property through because if I go into the hospital, my trustee has contractual authority to manage my trust, manage my assets in the trust, which includes my house. I'm also fortunate enough to have a house in another state, in Montana. And if I were to die and I didn't have a trust, I'd have to open a probate in Colorado to probate my Colorado house. I'd have to open an ancillary probate in Montana to probate my Montana house. So real estate in general, has to be dealt with through the probate process. And if it's in a trust, then the trustee is given the powers to deal with it. Whether you're in the hospital, it needs to be refinanced, whether it needs to be sold, whether it needs to be mortgaged, whatever it needs to be done, your trustee can do it through contractual authority of your trust versus a power of attorney, or nothing. I mean, you have to have some way for someone to do these things for you. And there's words like conservatorships, there's powers of attorney, there's trust, there's all these different tools for giving someone the authority to do what needs to be done with your real estate. But by far, the trust is probably, in most cases, the easiest vehicle.
Got it. So you bring up a good point. And sorry, Denisse, I don't mean to, I know you've got another question coming up, but I mean, you talk about probate, right? And I don't know if everyone understands what probate is, but I think it really comes into definition when someone doesn't have anything, right? So let's say I own my house, it's deeded into my name, my mortgage is in my name, all of that kind of stuff, and I pass away, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people just assume like, oh, my kids are just going to get that house, right? Like that's
Mm-hmm.
just what happens. And
Mm-hmm.
correct me if I'm wrong, but that's not what happens, right?
It
Or
can't. It can't happen. It has to. And I explain in a very simplified way is when a person dies, your social security number dies with you. Like you're not an entity anymore. This house was in your name now. The only person who has authority in your scenario to transfer that house to someone else is the probate court. And they're either going to do it using a will, if you have one, or they're going to do it according to the intestate laws if you don't have a will. So it's the difference between a formal probate and an informal probate, and that equates to time and money, as you might imagine. And so, in the scenario you're talking about, your family, your friends, whoever is helping in this situation, is going to have to petition the court to help transfer that property to either according to your will or according to the laws of Colorado. So yes, if in that scenario where the house is in your name, it's not going to transfer automatically without something else being done to it. And there's
got it.
there's a couple different tools in the toolbox, and I don't want to go into all of them because
Yeah.
sometimes people become we get an idea and then we go do it ourselves. And I've seen enough of this go wrong where it creates such a bigger issue. I encourage people to talk to somebody, anybody, and, with a legal background and kind of figure out what there's all kinds of do-it-yourself tools out there. Of course, I don't recommend that because this is what I do and I've seen how those don't work. But, there's enough information you can find. But by leaving a house in your name, it's not going to happen automatically. It just
What's the
can't.
main difference between someone just having a will and then actually doing a trust? Like if
Well,
someone comes to you and you're like, "Well, I have a will, I'm good."
uh-huh.
What would be the main differences, basically?
Sure. A will is kind of a universal term. I'll have some people who actually have a trust-based plan and they'll talk about their will.
Mhm.
With a will, it's the foundation of your plan if you have a will-based plan. If you have a trust, the will kind of becomes an ancillary document. You still have a will, but the trust is what controls. And trusts are administered privately. They are your trustee who you've chosen administers your trust according to what the trust tells them to do. And it's administered privately without court supervision. A will is really an instruction manual to the court. It tells the court who your personal representative is, who you want to distribute assets to, and the court goes about its business making that happen. That's really, in a simplistic fashion, a trustee is administered by your sorry, let me back up. A trust is administered by your trustee. A will is administered by the probate court.
I love
Okay,
that. That's
that makes
such a
sense.
great
It's a real,
example.
and it really is foundationally the difference. And I could, you could take a whole law school class on this, but if you want to boil it down to the basics, that's what it is.
We
And
got 30
I'm not
minutes,
talking
guys.
about all the
That's why I have you, Nicole.
it can be straightforward, but and I'm not talking about other ways to do things. And when I look at someone's situation, the assets, the family, we're just talking about one thing here. There's other options that we can always talk about too. And people say, oh, what about this? What about that? Yeah, there's other ways of doing things, but probably the most popular, most frequently used vehicle in my toolbox is a trust for transferring property, particularly real estate, because real estate is something that, by law has to be transferred either by a trust or a court.
Yep.
Awesome. If
Yeah.
someone wants to create an estate plan with a trust, how long does that take? Like, what's the first step that they should take?
Sure, good question. I have a process that I stick to probably 99% of the time. And that's I have a questionnaire that I send clients. It should only take about 10 minutes to fill out. It's a snapshot of your family, it's a snapshot of your assets. So I know what we're talking about transferring, kind of approximate values for tax purposes, and then kind of who your people are. And so that's what I have clients fill out before we meet. And then I have an initial consultation, which is usually half an hour, where we kind of get to know each other to exactly this kind of conversation. And then after usually half an hour or so, I can say, okay, I think this is going to be the best thing for you. I'll ask a lot of questions in this meeting. What do you want to do here? What do you want to do this? What if this happens? What if that happens? And through the information I get through those questions, I can usually formulate in my head what I think would be the best solution. And so I'll present that. Or if I've kind of on the fence of, well, maybe a will and doing this, this, and this would work. And maybe this, I'll talk through those. And then usually at the end of that, I quote a flat fee, because I find flat fees are a lot easier to work with clients. You're not watching the clock. I'm not watching the clock. We're just kind of getting the job done. So most of my work with estate planning is a flat fee work. And then at that point, if they say, yeah, we'd like to hire you, we'd like you to do the work, then we would have, we kind of go into design mode. And that's where I would ask even more questions. Who would take care of your estate if you were incapacitated? Who would take care of your, estate if you died? And we're talking, keep the lights on in your house. What about getting the bills paid? What about paying medical bills? What about tax issues? What about real estate? What if you're in the middle of a purchase or a sale or a refinance? Who's your person to do those sort of things? And then sometimes upon death, that's a different person, because that's selling your house maybe, or, working with guardians of children and setting up trusts for children. And so that might be a different person. And then there's the healthcare side of things, which we haven't touched on, but, you just because you're married doesn't mean you can automatically, advocate in a healthcare setting for your spouse or your child if they're over 18, as we talked about. So there's healthcare component. If you're in the hospital, you've got your finances that need to be taken care of, but you also have your healthcare that needs to be taken care of if you can't communicate. So I do both of those things. And that's the process. So that's the designing. Then I go and draft the documents for the clients. And, I think through it, I draft it, I review it. And then a lot of times I'll come back to them with questions, or they maybe couldn't answer all my questions. And they said, let us think about it. Let us think about it. So I'll circle back with them. We get the documents in final form, and then we'll have a meeting, usually 2 to 3 weeks after we design the plan, to meet, review, sit down, and sign the documents. That is, I like to keep it 2 or 3 weeks, because then I remember everything, they remember everything, and the job gets done. I have a cousin out in California who worked with an attorney. Oh, it's been more than a year now, and she still hasn't gotten anything in place. So that's hard. So yeah, 2 to 3 weeks is a turnaround time. I think of it as 3 phases: designing the plan, drafting the plan, and then reviewing and signing the plan. Actually, I should say 4 phases, because the 4th phase is once you have a trust in place. The key is getting help to fund that trust. When I say fund that trust, that's, put the house in the trust, put bank accounts in the trust if that's what you're doing, investment accounts, and setting up designated beneficiaries on retirement accounts. If you have minor children, the trust might be the beneficiary for those minor children. So there's that homework piece, and that the longer I do this, the more important that homework piece is.
Yeah.
And so that's the other piece of it. And depending on how motivated, organized, and time available the clients have, that can get done pretty quickly. Hopefully, that's the idea. But I always tell clients to give me a call about questions in the future, because things will come up. You'll go to buy a new house. Here, send them a certificate of trust. Give that to Sarah. Sarah will give it to the title company.
Yep.
They'll know what to do. Making sure things are in your trust is a very important part of having a trust. You can set a great trust up and spend time and money, but if you don't get things titled in it or payable to it, it's not going to do the job you want it to do. So that homework piece is important.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak from experience because, like I said, we met 10 years ago and put our trust together. And I mean, it really makes you think about everything, right? It's a
Mm-hmm.
very comprehensive process. And I think we got together again, I don't know, maybe 4 years ago and reevaluated it
Mm-hmm.
way too long the
Mm-hmm.
first time, right? So, you know,
Yeah,
I mean,
it's good.
what do you recommend? Like every 3 years, 5 years to review it?
I think every 3 to 4 is
Okay.
good. I think if something changes in your life, that's why I tell clients, pick up the phone and give me a call.
Yeah.
I'll tell you whether we need to meet. I'll tell you what to do on the fly most of the time. Send your certificate of trust to Sarah, or yeah, change your designated beneficiary to this. Or if your children are getting divorced, yes, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of that's the maintenance. People say, what's the downside of the trust? Well, it costs a little bit more to plan to prepare because it's another document. And then there's no cost, but it's the maintenance, which I call when you open a new account. If I've decided that your trust is going to hold everything, remember, open that new account in the name of the trust, buy that house in the name of the trust, there's certain things. And I go through with each asset and say, okay, this is going to be owned by the trust. This is payable to the trust, or we're going to do this with. So it's kind of on an asset by asset basis to make sure everything is accountable. And I've probably changed how I do things since we worked together because now my binders are even more important and I have tabs. I mean, my binder literally, I did this maybe a couple years ago. My house titles are there. My car titles are in that binder. My insurance policy for the house is in there. My medical insurance, my car insurance, my credit card bill, my utility bill, my water bill, everything is in this
All
binder
right
so
there.
that if
Yeah.
I kick the bucket tomorrow, you know, my people know where to find that binder and they know everything, copies of everything is in there.
That's a really good.
No, it's
Yeah.
Yeah, it
You
makes you
never know.
feel better. And that's the great thing about doing this type of work is that people it feel, it's an organizational thing. It's a okay, wow, okay, I got everything in place. And then there's another great moment when you get everything in there and you go, okay, I actually can disappear tomorrow and someone can run my life because they've got everything in this binder that they need. So that's one of the things I like about what I do. You get a lot of hugs at the end.
yeah,
I love
definitely. Well, and not, I mean, we got in this conversation because of the trust, and you actually touched on this, and I want to point this out because I fall into a generation that has kids transitioning from being under 18 to over 18. And
Right.
I've done this for both of my boys when they turned 18. We went to Nikki and did a power of attorney. Like, I can't open bank accounts and stuff for him or anything, but like, if you think about it, when your kid turns 18, both my kids turned 18 while they were still in high school. When
Yes.
they go to the
Yes.
doctor can't tell me anything.
Right.
If
Right.
something happened to them or like, and I needed to get into their bank account or if anything like that, like I couldn't do anything because
Right.
they're legally adults. So I had Nikki draft up documents from like a healthcare perspective, from a financial perspective, like their will,
Mhm.
to have that because at that 18, I've just run into too many people who get into a situation, their kids at school, they get hurt. You call the doctor or the hospital you want to know, and
Yeah, you wanna know, or you
your
don't
kid
even know where
hasn't
they
given you approval. They can't tell you anything.
they can't
Yeah.
tell you anything. They could pick
No.
your child up at the soccer field to take them in an ambulance, and they can't tell you where they're taking them.
Yes.
That's crazy.
And you call around the hospitals, they can't tell you if they're there or not. So, yeah, my son went to college in the fall, and it made me even more aware of everything that goes into it for these 18-year-olds. And he has a healthcare power of attorney, financial power of
Yep.
attorney. We talked about bank accounts. His bank account have transfer on death, not to his minor sister. That's going to
Yeah.
cause more problems. His car is transferred automatically upon death. His bank is transferred automatically. He's got powers of attorney for Montana and in powers for here. So
Yep.
it's, his bases are covered. But now actually I work with clients' kids. kind of a very minor flat fee, but I engage the kids independently so that we can have these conversations, because maybe they don't want to list mom and dad as their healthcare
Right.
decision maker, and maybe they don't want to talk about this. So I've gotten more formalized about this, mainly
Yeah.
because I sent my own son out to college and realized how much you realize what level you're on as an 18-year-old and how you think about things.
Yeah.
So I try to put it into 18-year-old terms. And one girl was cute. She was at CSU, and we were talking the other day, and she's like, "Well, can I put my roommate?" I'm like, "She's gonna be your roommate tomorrow?" And she
Yeah.
said, "No." She said, "Yeah, I think so." I said,
Oh.
"What if we decide to amputate your leg or not? Would you want your roommate deciding that?" She goes, "No,
Yeah.
I wouldn't." I was like, "Okay."
Oh my gosh, that's so true. No, it's interesting because I mean, one of my sons was like, "Yeah, whatever. Where do I sign?" And the other one was like, "No,
Yeah,
wait a second. Like, let me read through this." And
yeah,
now what? And I'm sure Denise, you can guess which one of my children did this, and Nikki knows because she's there. But one's like asking questions like, "So, like, what? Can you pull the plug on me? Like, what does this mean? Or like, can you get into my bank account? Like, what?" And Nikki's like explaining to him, "It's only if you're incapacitated. Like, it's only if you
right,
can't."
right, and that you have to be careful of that too. And I let the kids. I'm like, "Okay, do you want two independent doctors or just your attending physician?" Some
Yeah.
of the kids be like, "I want two opinions here. I want to make
Yeah.
sure."
Yeah.
And the other thing I've changed is that when Brody went off to college, I kept the originals.
Oh,
Because
there you
he's in college. I'm the primary. I want the originals.
go. Yeah.
So that's I
They're
and but
all
it's
they've
up to
all
the
been
kids.
through Britney Spears, so they're like, all worried that like Britney Spears' dad's gonna come and take over their lives. So
Right. Right.
okay, this has been great information. I want to just be conscious of our time. Last
Yeah.
question, and this is broad, right? So I know everyone's situation is different, but if
Sure.
someone was kind of budgeting for what it would cost to put, this estate plan or this trust together, like
Mhm.
low end, I mean, high end, I know the more assets they have, the more things they have,
Mhm.
obviously, the more that goes up. But what would you say on average you're seeing people spend to put something like this together?
Sure. Sure. Um, and like as you said, everything is different. And
Yes.
so I don't I kind of have set fees for certain things that I've even tracked my hours, and it pretty much comes in about where I think it would.
Okay.
Um, And it's always kind of the advanced planning is relative to the probate costs, right? You can do nothing and your estate will go through probate. What is that going to cost versus I plan now, and what does that cost? And so a couple of months ago, I closed a probate for an individual, a guy that he was not married, he didn't have kids, he had straightforward assets, a house, a bank account, investment account, maybe a life policy or two, and retirement accounts. And that closed out at I think 8,100 to about $8,000 to take it through with all costs in my time, court fees, all of that was about an $8,000 probate. And use that for what it is. I mean, probates vary. Planning doesn't vary nearly as much as what probates vary, and it just depends on the county. It depends on the attorney. It depends on the personal representative, how responsive they are. It depends on so many things. But so my fees, if you're not a taxable estate, and taxable these days is like over 13 million. So anything over 13 million, are kind of close to that, requires more tax planning. Not taxable estates going to be under 5,000. Individuals usually around kind of 3 to 4, maybe mid 3,500. Probably on average, an individual planning with me would be about 3,900, 38, 3,900.
Okay.
That's with one property. For a married couple, probably 48, 4,900.
Okay.
So I do comprehensive planning. I do, sophisticated planning. I've been doing this a long time.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to be the lowest cost.
No.
Um, and there's certain circumstances where I would be, willing to help in different sometimes I can do an hourly, but I really do try to stick to that planning for an individual, 38, 3,900, planning for a married couple, 48, 4,900.
Well, I think
But
it's
that includes all
okay.
of my time, includes the deed transfers, includes all the designing, all the drafting, reviewing. It includes homework, getting all of that done. And going forward, as I tell my clients, if I can answer your question when I'm walking my dog or driving
Yeah.
my kids around, I don't bill for that time because I remember my clients. I've got it all on my computer. I can pull it up in a second, like I did yours when we were talking.
Yeah.
So I don't bill for that going forward. Call me, get my opinion. People call and ask for referrals all the time. If I have to sit down in the future and actually type things on a computer and do amendments, I bill hourly then.
Right.
But once you're a flat fee estate planning client of mine, you stay that way. And I just met with a client this morning who did a restatement. His wife had passed away. It took half an hour to review and sign with him. It took me maybe 45 minutes to draft everything for him. So the maintenance of keeping things updated is not great. But you do have to want to invest the time, and you do have to want to invest the money.
Well, and I
But
think
it's still relatively much less than what you're going to spend.
you and I are a perfect example, right? I mean, we engaged with you 10 years ago. We're still talking today. We were just,
Yeah.
we probably touch base a couple times a year, whether it's for a referral or a question or something like that. Like you want to partner with someone that you're going to have a long-term relationship with. I mean, we look at the same way in our real estate business, right?
Mm-hmm.
We discount? No, we're not. But,
Mm-hmm.
it's a big decision. It's a big thing. And I think it's important. And I'm shocked actually at even some of the high net worth properties that we sell that aren't in a trust. It shocks me
Yeah.
sometimes. So
Yeah. And I normally would never even throw out those numbers, but I think I don't know who's listening to this or who's talking about
yeah,
it. You need to kind of have a realistic expectation. Is that going to be the number? No, not necessarily. And if an individual calls me, I do everything I can to not put a number out there, because as soon as I put a number out there, everybody thinks they have a simple estate.
yeah,
Everybody thinks they have simple assets. And you sit down at the table and they're going to bring, oh, and I've got this. Oh, and these oil interests I inherited. And oh, and then this condo. And then, just the little things that are actually, but if they're hard to plan with, they're really hard to administer when you've died.
yeah,
So the more complex the assets are now, they're going to multiply that by 10 if something happens to you. So simplification is a big part of what I coach clients on too. Do you
definitely.
need 19 bank accounts? Probably not.
Yeah.
The
You know,
initial consultation, do you charge for that? Is there like an upfront fee for that, or is it
no,
just
I don't. I don't. No, that's just I enjoy getting to know people, talk hypothetically, listen to kind of what they want to accomplish. And at that point, that's where I can say, okay, yeah, you're going to be, this is what I'm going to recommend. This is what it's going to cost.
okay?
Or sometimes people come in and I'm like, you know what, this is really simple. You really do have a simple estate. Let's do this, this, and this, and simplify it. So there's there's a lot of different. I mean, you've got a finite amount of options, but within that, you have a lot of adjustments you can do depending on the person, and that's what they want to do, what their situation is, what the type of assets are. That's what I analyze in that consultation, and people's personalities too. You don't want to overwhelm anybody, but you also don't want to. You got to present all the options.
Yeah.
But no,
Absolutely.
I don't charge for that, and I try to keep it pretty close to half an hour. I'd say 90% of the time, though, people will say, "Okay, that sounds good. This seems reasonable. Let's get started." And
Okay.
so when I meet with a client for half an hour, I've always got another hour or so on the back end of that meeting. If they want to get started, then we go ahead and get started. Because once you've talked that far into it, you might as well just kind of get going if you want to. But, on occasion, people say, oh, I want to think about it. I want to shop and, talk to another attorney, which I always encourage. And then we can always make another appointment in the future to design the plan.
Okay. Very cool.
This has
Do you,
been great information.
one
Oh,
last
good.
question.
I hope.
Do
Yeah,
you have
sure.
anyone on your team that speaks Spanish? Or anyone
No,
with you?
I
No.
don't.
Okay.
I don't. I don't. But I have worked with translators before.
Okay.
Um,
That's good.
my favorite client, I can't remember if he spoke Chinese or Korean, but when his nephew was translating the documents, at some point he translated to me, tell her to hurry up. So I'm like, great, I can summarize this, this, and this. It's too much. He
Hilarious.
wanted bigger concepts. And so I switched how I was explaining the documents into bigger, more translatable concepts, which was a So I'm happy to work with translators. I don't speak anything well enough to even suggest I would be able to communicate in French, but Spanish, no.
Yeah. No.
Okay.
Unfortunately, no. I'm
Yeah.
not. Um, yeah, that's a,
No, it's
We
good to know
all
there's translators that we can work with. So
absolutely.
yeah. I wish I did. I'd love to be able to speak another language.
Well, Denise is going to teach us all, so we'll invite you to the next meetup.
It's impossible. I've tried. I do a lot of gestures.
There you go. Well, Nikki, tell us really quick how people can get in touch with you. And then on the recordings of this video, I will put your contact information in the comments so people can get a hold of you. But for anyone watching, what's the
Either
best way to find you?
Sure, pick up the phone, and you'll put my number up there, 720-261-8375, or shoot me an email. And
Perfect.
that's straightforward too, Nikki@Royer-LLC.com. So either way of communication is fine. What I'll do is kind of, chat for a few minutes, and then we'll get email and send you the questionnaire. And then you can bring that with you in paper or email it back to me. And then we'd sit down. We can either meet in person. I do those initial consultations on the phone. I do those initial consultations with Zoom. I work with a lot of families that are in Telluride, Steamboat, Crested Butte. I'm only licensed in Colorado, though, so I'm only working with Colorado residents. I'm working on Montana, so that'll expand into there. But
Nice.
for now, I'm just licensed in Colorado. But I have some clients I've never met in person. We've worked on the phone or Zoom, and we've reviewed on the computers together. And then I've mailed packets ready to sign, and they sign them with a local notary. So that's worked really well too. Um,
Awesome.
Thanks to COVID, we got creative.
Yes, right. Everyone did. Look at us right now. We're all having a
Right?
meeting here.
Would have
Yeah.
never done this or been comfortable doing it.
Yeah. And we're all in 3 different locations. So
It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. Yeah.
well, Nikki, thanks for joining us. You are welcome to stay on. We're going to wrap up a few things, just some housekeeping things we have on our side.
I'll let you go do that, but I really enjoyed it. Thanks for the opportunity. And yeah, let
Yeah.
me know what I can do.
Sounds good, Nikki. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Great. All right. Just the 2 of us now, Denise. That was fun. That was a lot of good information.
I'm like, my head is spinning. I'm like, who do I need to tell? You guys need to
Right?
get on this because
Yeah.
you never know, and it's so scary to think about. But it's the things that you have to you have to think about these
100%. I
things.
mean, there's so many other advantages to trust that she didn't even get into, but like I remember, and full disclosure, like I remember the first time when Scott and I went to set up our trust, and she told us how much it was going to cost. I like wanted to puke a little bit. I was like, what? Like, oh my gosh. But again, I look at 10 years and what we've invested in that trust. And when we go and do our reviews, it's, I don't know, maybe $500 for $800 for the review or whatever. But like, it's just such peace of mind that if God forbid anything were to happen,
Everyone knows what to do.
everyone knows what to do. There's no attorney fee. Like there's no extra attorney fees. There's no, because it's all, you don't have to pay the courts. Like
Yeah,
it's done.
it's
Yeah.
basically the same thing. Like, and we're going, but
No, we are. It's okay. It's a good topic.
it's the investment. So maybe it's 5,000 now, but if you don't have the trust or you don't have a will in place, the probate court is going to charge you that or even more probably.
Exactly. They're going to charge more and you're not paying for it. Whoever is, in your will or whatever, they're paying for it and they might not want to pay for it. Right. And then what happens? Like, yeah. So, okay, perfect. So couple things. Next week, we're going to talk about buying new home construction. That's been a big topic. So that's going to be great. Free coffee. When's the next one of those, Denise?
March 15th at Convivio Cafe from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. So yeah, we'll do coffee.
Perfect. Now, this is the big one. Okay. I got it here.
I love it.
Oh my God, it's so big. All right. For those of you who are just tuning in, we do a giveaway every couple months. And for January and February, it's been this Nespresso machine. I'm kind of jealous.
No, I won't want to.
I know. Kind of nice.
I don't
So
care forever.
You've had a chance to enter this if you know Denise and I, if you've joined us at one of our events, if you've been to Convivio Cafe, if you've been to the Reunion Coffee House, if you follow us on social media. So, I mean, if you didn't enter, that's on you.
You did.
Yep, you should
I
have
don't think we'll
entered.
do an espresso, but
I know. So we are going to pick the winner right now. I have got a random generator. So Denise, you tell me when to push the button and I'll generate.
okay, go ahead.
Okay. All right. Number 10. Here we go. Ooh, Jennifer Navarro,
Oh, okay.
Thomas City, and Denise, she met you at Reunion.
Yeah,
Look
I'll
at
give
that.
her.
Our winner. So Jennifer Navarro, we will be reaching out to you and coordinating getting you your Nespresso machine.
Ooh, I'm so jealous.
Exciting. Now we got to come up with something great to give away next. You guys are going to
I
have to.
know.
So, all right, we've taken up a ton of time. Let me put up our QR code here. If you scan this, guys, you'll see about our free coffee, our webinars. You can watch our past webinars. You can go on and share this great webinar with someone. You can learn about our giveaways. We do a lot of great stuff. So you guys have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next Monday.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.